facility. However, the exact date and location of his video couldn't be verified.
We have arrived here along with several of our colleagues at the resilient island of Kars. Thank God. Life is flowing, oil exports are uninterrupted, and we haven't encountered any specific issues here. Security is completely established on Karg Island. The dedicated staff of the oil industry are also carrying out their operations on this island. What I can tell you with absolute certainty, and I want to...
Iran has claimed a major escalation in its campaign against U.S. forces in the Middle East, with the Qatam al-Anbaya central headquarters claiming that over 500 American troops were targeted in its latest wave of missile and drone strikes. In a statement on Saturday, spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Ibrahim Zolfikari said Iranian operations forced U.S. personnel to abandon their conventional bases and relocate to temporary sites. He claimed that one such location in Dubai housed over 400 personnel, while another held more than 100. Both were subsequently struck using precision missiles and drones launched by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force and Navy. The statement described the strikes as inflicting very heavy losses, alleging that ambulances had been evacuating wounded American personnel, including commanders, for hours. These claims, however, remain unverified by independent sources.
We have previously warned that the aggressor American military, due to the decisive offensive by our armed forces and the destruction of their bases in the region, have been forced to flee and are now hiding outside their own bases. In the past hours, 2 of their hideouts were identified. In the first, over 400 individuals, and in the second, more than 100 had been concealed. Both locations were then targeted and struck by precision missiles and drones launched by the valiant men of the aerospace and naval forces of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. That truly very heavy casualties were inflicted upon them. For many hours, ambulances have been busy transporting the American commanders and soldiers who were killed and wounded. Trump and the commanders of the American army must have clearly understood that this entire region will inevitably transform into a graveyard for American soldiers, and they will find no other path but to completely surrender to the divine will of the heroic people and the courageous fighters of Islam. And victory comes only from Allah, the Almighty, the All-Wise.
Separately, Iranian officials also claimed attacks on U.S. tactical vessels in the Persian Gulf and a strike on a U.S. support ship operating at a distance from Oman's port of Salalah. Tehran maintained that it respects Oman's sovereignty, even as it expanded the scope of its reported operations. According to AP, at least 29 U.S. troops have been wounded over the past week in a series of Iranian attacks targeting Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. The latest strike reportedly involved a combination of missiles and drones, injuring 15 personnel, 5 of them seriously, after earlier attacks had already left 14 troops wounded. The Iranian statement was also accompanied by sharp rhetoric, warning U.S. President Donald Trump and military leadership that continued operations would turn the region into a graveyard for American soldiers, while asserting that surrender was Washington's only option. Notably, CENTCOM, the U.S. military command overseeing the operations in Iran, has admitted more than 300 of U.S. military personnel have suffered injuries since the start of Operation Epic Fury. More than 300 American troops have been injured since the start of the Iran war, underlining the growing human cost of a conflict that U.S. officials have at times portrayed as under control. According to U.S. Central Command, approximately 303 service members have been wounded since hostilities began on February 28th under Operation Epic Fury. The majority of these injuries have been described as non-critical, with around 273 troops already returning to duty, while about 10 personnel remain seriously injured. Many troops have reportedly suffered traumatic brain injuries, burns, and shrapnel wounds, often linked to missile and drone attacks on U.S. bases across the region. The figure marks a sharp rise from earlier stages of the conflict. Just a week ago, reports indicated around 140 to 200 injured personnel, meaning casualties have more than doubled as the war has intensified. In addition to the wounded, at least 13 U.S. troops have been killed so far, highlighting that the conflict has moved beyond limited strikes into sustained, high-risk military engagement. Despite these losses, U.S. officials have maintained that most injuries are minor and that operational readiness remains intact. However, the scale of casualties points to the increasing frequency and effectiveness of retaliatory attacks targeting U.S. positions, particularly through drones and missile strikes. The rising toll also comes at a time when Washington is considering further troop deployments and potential escalation options, even as diplomatic efforts remain uncertain.
Iranian general drops bombshell. All U.S. bases in Mideast wiped out? Iran shatters America's military regional dominance. In a major development, the Iranian armed forces on March 27th revealed what it called a stunning victory over the U.S. military amid the ongoing war. The spokesperson for General Staff of Iran's Armed Forces, Brigadier General Abu Fazal Shekarchi, claimed that 17 U.S. military bases in the Middle East have been destroyed. Shekarchi said the U.S. could not defend their bases and their army from Tehran's aerial blitz, reported Mehr news agency. He added that Iran changed its defensive doctrine to an offensive one after the 12-day Israel-Iran war in June last year, in which the U.S. participated by bombing Tehran's nuclear facilities. Shekarchi further warned Iran has not attacked any country over the past 47 years and will not invade against other countries. Iran's aggressive doctrine means that if a country invades us, we will attack until it is destroyed and will not let it go. He vowed that Iran's defensive strategy will continue until it leads to victory and, quote, the enemy is punished, adding that punishing and pursuing the, quote, aggressor, unquote, will be on the agenda until removing the shadow of war from the Islamic Republic of Iran forever. The explosive claim came a day after Iran's highest operational command unit, Qatam el-Anbiya Central Headquarters, said that it is on the hunt for American commanders and soldiers who allegedly took refuge in hideouts outside their bases in the Middle East after they were hit by Tehran.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, given the undeniable fact that all of the United States military installations within the region have been utterly destroyed, that commanders and soldiers have consequently fled and sought refuge in various concealed hideouts located outside of those bases, and we are now actively searching for them. We call upon the people of the countries in this region to report the locations where they are hiding and simultaneously for their own safety and security to demand the expulsion of all Americans from the region, and indeed victory comes only from Allah, the Almighty, the All-Wise.
Referring to the fight between the U.S. and Iran over a key oil trade route, the Strait of Hormuz,
Brigadier General Abu Fazal Shakarchi warned, quote, "The situation in the Strait of Hormuz will not return to the way it was before. Even if this war ends, we have set conditions, and countries should comply fully with our conditions." For more than 2 weeks now, maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has been disrupted. Several vessels have been attacked, and many others have been stuck on the two ends of the strait, unwilling to take the risk of passing through. The warning from Iran came as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on March 26th said that it was in the interest of all G7 nations to push for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, currently blocked by Iran.
Strait of Hormuz.
Well, it's in their interest to help. The other countries get far more of their fuel from there than we do. So
what kind of help are you going to ask? Minesweepers, naval help?
well, those specifics I'll leave it to the Department of War as to exactly what, but it's in their interest. It's in their national interest.
As Rubio calls on the G7 allies to back America's bid to lift Iran's partial blockade of the strait. Reports suggest that the Trump administration is mulling the use of ground troops to reopen the strait, a move that could dangerously escalate the war, which has already engulfed the entire region.
This is no longer a warning, this is a surge. A massive escalation is unfolding right now. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has unleashed yet another wave of strikes, but this time, the scale is staggering and the message unmistakable. Wave 83 of Operation True Promise 4 has been executed. And the targets? Spread across multiple high-value locations, each one chosen with precision. The operation was launched Thursday evening, coordinated by the Naval and Aerospace Divisions of the Revolutionary Guard. Its codename, Ya Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, a phrase heavy with symbolism and intent. Officially, the Guard claims this wave is dedicated to people in the northern Persian Gulf. But the targets suggest something far bigger, far more calculated. Among them, the Ashdod oil storage facilities, a critical artery of energy infrastructure. Also struck, the Modi'in settlement, identified as a key deployment zone for Israeli forces. This wasn't random. It was a dual-strike economic and military delivered in a single, coordinated blow. A signal that the battlefield is expanding, and the stakes are rising fast. But the operation did not stop there. The Revolutionary Guard claims it also targeted an American military intelligence exchange center in the region. Alongside that, major U.S.-linked bases including Al Dafra and Al Udeid were also part of the strike list. Further targets included Ali Al Salem base, specifically maintenance and repair hangars for transport aircraft and drones. Fuel depots used by U.S. forces for jets and fighters were also reportedly hit. In addition, the Sheikh ISA base saw strikes aimed at maintenance infrastructure for the Patriot system. According to the Revolutionary Guard, the operation was executed with complete success. A combination of long-range and medium-range missile systems was used in this coordinated assault. These included solid and liquid fuel missiles, precision-guided systems, and multi-warhead payloads designed for maximum impact. The use of suicide and loitering drones adds another layer to this operation. It reflects a hybrid warfare approach, combining missile barrages with drone persistence over targets. This suggests careful
The Houthis' latest missile activity against Israel and the United States may have had limited immediate impact, but the larger concern is not what they have done, it is what they could do next. At the center of that concern lies the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, a narrow maritime corridor connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. It is one of the most critical arteries of global trade, carrying a significant share of oil shipments and cargo moving toward Europe via the Suez Canal. Any sustained disruption here would not remain confined to the region. It would ripple across global markets. What makes the current moment particularly sensitive is the broader context. The Strait of Hormuz is already under pressure amid the Iran conflict. If Bab al-Mandeb were to come under similar strain, the result would be a dual choke point crisis, two of the world's most vital energy and trade routes simultaneously disrupted. According to Al Jazeera, analysts believe this could move from disruption to something far more severe, potentially crippling trade toward Europe if escalation continues. That is why even the possibility of Houthi action in this area is being described as a nightmare scenario. Unlike conventional naval blockades, the Houthis do not need overwhelming maritime power to create impact. Their strength lies in asymmetric tactics, drones, anti-ship missiles, and sporadic strikes that inject uncertainty into shipping lanes. Even limited attacks can force commercial vessels to reroute, increase insurance premiums, and slow down global supply chains. This is already visible in parts of the Red Sea. Shipping companies are highly sensitive to risk. They do not wait for a full blockade. The perception of danger alone is often enough to divert routes. If Bab al-Mandeb is seen as unstable, traffic could shift toward longer routes around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to transit times and significantly increasing costs. But for now, the Houthis appear to be calibrating their actions carefully. Rather than immediately escalating toward a full disruption, they are operating in a space of controlled pressure, demonstrating capability without triggering a full-scale regional response. Analysts describe this as a strategic balance, applying enough pressure to remain relevant in the conflict while avoiding moves that could provoke direct intervention from countries like Saudi Arabia or a broader coalition response. There are also indications that this restraint may not be accidental. The Red Sea has, in recent months, become a relatively stable outlet for energy exports, particularly from Saudi Arabia's Yanbu port. Any major disruption here would not only affect global markets, but also directly impact regional stakeholders. This creates an incentive structure where escalation is weighed carefully against potential backlash. That said, the situation remains highly fluid. The Houthis' current posture suggests they are testing thresholds, gauging reactions, assessing responses, and positioning themselves within the broader conflict. But that posture can shift quickly, especially if the conflict elsewhere intensifies or if strategic calculations change. The real risk lies in escalation by accumulation, not a single decisive move, but a gradual increase in frequency and intensity of attacks that slowly erodes confidence in the safety of the route. Over time, this can have the same effect as a blockade without ever formally declaring one. In that sense, Bab al-Mandeb is not just a geographic choke point, it is a strategic lever. If activated fully, it could transform a regional conflict into a global economic disruption, linking battlefield dynamics with supply chains, energy prices, and international trade flows. For now, that lever has not been pulled completely, but the fact that it exists and is being discussed is enough to place the situation on edge. Because in a war already spreading across multiple fronts, the opening of a maritime front at Bab al-Mandeb would not just escalate the conflict, it would redefine it.
Official statement issued by the Yemeni Armed Forces. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, Allah Almighty has declared, "O you who believe, if you aid Allah, He will aid you and make your feet firm." Allah Almighty has spoken the truth. In implementation of what was stated in the previous statement of the Yemeni Armed Forces regarding direct military intervention in support and backing of the Islamic Republic of Iran and for the resistance fronts in Lebanon, Iraq, and Palestine, and due to the continued military escalation, targeting of infrastructure, and committing crimes and massacres. In defense of our brethren in Lebanon, Iran, Iraq, and Palestine, the Yemeni armed forces, with the divine assistance of Almighty God and placing their full reliance upon Him, have successfully executed their very first military operation. This was accomplished through a significant barrage of ballistic missiles, which were precisely aimed at critical and sensitive military targets belonging to the Israeli enemy in the southern regions of occupied Palestine. This operation was launched in conjunction with the heroic actions being carried out by our Mujahideen brothers in Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The operation successfully achieved all its objectives thanks to the grace of God. Our operations, with the assistance of Almighty God, will persist until the stated objectives are fully realized. And as was stated in the previous communique issued by the armed forces, until the aggression against all fronts of resistance is brought to a complete halt. God is our sufficiency, and He is the best disposer of all our affairs. He is the best protector and the best helper. Long live Yemen, free, proud, and independent. And victory for Yemen and for all the free people of the nation. Sana, the 9th of Shawwal, 1447 Hijri, corresponding to the 28th of March, 2026. This official statement was issued by the Yemeni armed forces.
The Iran-US-Israel war has grown deadlier with the entry of the Yemen-based Houthi militant group. The powerful Ansarullah movement has officially joined the conflict. According to a statement by the Israeli Defense Forces, a missile was launched from Yemen toward Israel early on March 28th. The IDF said its air defense systems were activated to intercept the aerial threat. However, the Israeli military did not confirm whether the missile was launched by pro-Iran Houthi rebels, though the projectile was most likely fired by the group. The missile launch also prompted Israel to issue alerts around the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center, commonly known as the Dimona nuclear site in the Negev desert. The militant group has previously carried out missile and drone attacks against Israel and ships passing through the Red Sea in retaliation for Israel's offensive in Gaza, which has killed more than 72,000 people since October 2023. The missile launch came a day after Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Sari threatened to intervene in the Iran war against Israel and the United States, saying, "Our fingers are on the trigger."
In light of the continued aggression by the American and Israeli enemy against the Islamic Republic of Iran, Palestine and Gaza, Iraq and Lebanon, in implementation of the Zionist plan, which threatens the entire nation, the Yemeni armed forces, keen on the stability and security of the region and the cessation of aggression, affirm the following. First, the necessity for the American and Israeli enemy to respond immediately to international diplomatic efforts to halt the aggression against Iran and the countries of the Axis, as it is an unjust, oppressive, and unprovoked aggression that harms stability and security at the global and regional levels and damages the global economy. Second, the necessity of an immediate cessation of aggression against Muslim countries in Palestine, Lebanon, Iran, and Iraq, and the lifting of the unjust siege on Yemen. Third, the necessity of implementing the Gaza Agreement and fulfilling the obligations it includes regarding humanitarian entitlements and the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. Fourth, we affirm that our fingers are on the trigger for direct military intervention in any of the following cases: the joining of any other alliances with America and Israel against the Islamic Republic of Iran and the axis of jihad and resistance, the use of the Red Sea to carry out hostile operations by America and Israel against the Islamic Republic of Iran and against any Muslim country, which we will not allow, the continuation of the escalation against the Islamic Republic and the axis of jihad and resistance, as dictated by the theater of military operations. Fifth, the Yemeni armed forces warn against any unjust measures aimed at tightening the siege on the Yemeni people. In conclusion, we affirm that our military operations only target the Israeli and American enemy to thwart the Zionist scheme and do not target any Muslim people.
The fresh Houthi attack near Israel's nuclear site comes almost a week after Iranian forces struck two southern Israeli towns, Dimona and Arad, on March 21st. According to reports, the Iranian attack wounded more than 100 people after Israeli air defense systems failed to intercept the projectiles. Iranian state television said the strike on Dimona, which houses a nuclear facility, was a response to an earlier attack on its own nuclear site at Natanz. The International Atomic Energy Agency said it had received no indication of damage to the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center, and that no abnormal radiation levels had been detected in the area. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said the agency is closely monitoring the situation and urged that maximum military restraint should be observed, particularly in the vicinity of nuclear facilities. Dimona has been at the heart of Israel's nuclear program since the research center, built in secret with French assistance, was established there in 1958.
A direct missile strike near one of the most sensitive nuclear sites in the world. Southern Israel rocked, defenses breached, and dozens wounded in a single evening. A chilling escalation unfolds in southern Israel as a ballistic missile slams into a residential area near Dimona. The exact moment the Iranian missile struck Dimona was captured on CCTV cameras. The desert city, home to Israel's most secretive nuclear research center, is suddenly thrust into the center of a rapidly intensifying conflict. Emergency sirens wail across the region as residents scramble for shelters, but the incoming projectile proves unstoppable. For the first time, Iran-linked missile fire appears to penetrate Israel's heavily fortified air defense systems near Dimona. According to Magen David Adom, more than 36 people require urgent medical attention following the strike. Shrapnel injuries, panic-induced trauma, and injuries sustained while rushing to shelters overwhelm emergency responders on the ground. Among the wounded, a 10-year-old boy is left with moderate injuries, a stark reminder of the civilian toll in an increasingly volatile confrontation. Scenes of chaos unfold as ambulances rush through dimly lit streets, carrying victims away from shattered homes.
So far, over 35 casualties with varying degrees of severity have arrived at the hospital. A 12-year-old child was severely injured and has now been transferred to the operating room for further treatment. Another injured person in his 20s sustained moderate injuries, and all other casualties with minor injuries or anxiety are currently being treated in Soroka's emergency room.
The strike comes with a clear message from Tehran. Iran declares it is targeting Israel's nuclear program in retaliation for an earlier attack on its Natanz enrichment facility. That facility, located deep within Iranian territory, was reportedly struck just hours earlier. Iranian state media points fingers at joint US-Israeli involvement, though Israel swiftly denies responsibility. The International Atomic Energy Agency acknowledges reports of the Dimona incident, but offers cautious reassurance. No signs of damage to the Negev Nuclear Research Center are detected, and no abnormal radiation levels are reported. Yet the symbolism of the strike cannot be ignored. Dimona, operational since 1958, represents the heart of Israel's alleged nuclear capability, a program shrouded in decades of secrecy. While Israel has never officially confirmed possessing nuclear weapons, global consensus strongly suggests otherwise. And now that very symbol appears to have been placed directly in the crosshairs.
You are being asked to use